Richard Sterling, a billionaire who owned the real estate empire Sterling Holdings, gazed out of his office window on the 80th floor of Manhattan skyscraper. Below him, New York City pulsed like an endless river of light, but within him, there was only a vast emptiness. In his early 50s, with immense wealth and boundless power, Richard was still lonely. The pressure for a male heir to take over his company weighed heavily, especially from conservative board members. Richard felt suffocated in the gilded cage he had built for himself. At the same time, not far away, Maya, a young woman with determined eyes and a warm smile, quietly navigated her wheelchair through a bustling Lower East Side street. Her lustrous brown hair was neatly tied back, her clothes simple yet clean. Her life had been a continuous series of challenges, but Maya never let that dim her optimistic spirit. She worked part-time at a disability support center, using her experiences to help others in similar situations. Every day, Maya believed that something good awaited her, though she didn't know what it was. One Friday evening, Richard decided to dine at the Gilded Lily, one of the most exclusive restaurants he owned, a place he often frequented to find some peace in his noisy world. But tonight, the loneliness seemed even stronger. Looking around, he saw happy couples, families gathered together. A crazy thought flashed through his mind. "I'm going to marry the first woman who walks into this restaurant," he muttered to David, the restaurant manager, who had served him for years and knew the chairman's sometimes impulsive nature. David looked at Richard with a bewildered expression, but Richard just shrugged. Consider it a gamble with fate. The revolving door of the Gilded Lily gently opened, and a woman entered. But it wasn't the image of a glamorous lady Richard usually saw. It was Maya, a young woman in a wheelchair. She had just finished her part-time work nearby and decided to drop into the Gilded Lily just to ask for a cup of warm water, as the weather had suddenly turned cold. Maya felt a little self-conscious seeing the curious glances of the elegant diners. She wasn't used to places like this. Richard, initially stunned, then a peculiar smile spread across his face. This was it. "Excuse me, miss," he said, approaching Maya, despite the surprised looks from David and everyone around them. "Please, join me for dinner." Maya looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She hesitated, but Richard was so genuine and inviting. The meal unfolded in a strange atmosphere. Richard tried to learn about Maya, her life, the dreams she harbored. As the meal neared its end, Richard looked directly into Maya's eyes and said something that stunned her. "Miss Maya, will you marry me?" Maya thought it was a joke, a huge misunderstanding. "Sir, I don't understand," she stammered. Richard smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "I know this is very sudden, but I vowed to marry the first woman who walked into this restaurant tonight. And that's you. I don't want to be lonely anymore, and I feel a special connection with you." Maya was still overwhelmed, but there was something in Richard's eyes, a sincerity mixed with a hint of desperation, that touched her heart. She didn't answer immediately, but her silence was a ray of hope for Richard. Richard didn't wait for an immediate answer. He arranged for Maya to have a comfortable apartment on the Upper West Side, near Central Park, where she could easily move around in her wheelchair. He also made time to visit her frequently, bringing small gifts and stories about the world he lived in. Maya initially kept her distance. She feared the glamour, the vast difference in their circumstances. She had experienced many disappointments in her life, and she didn't want to be hurt again. "Why are you doing this?" Maya asked Richard one rainy afternoon as they sat on her new apartment's balcony, looking out at the park. Richard looked at her, his eyes gentle. "Because I'm tired of being lonely. I want a companion, a partner. And when I saw you walk into the Gilded Lily, something told me it was you." Richard told her about the pressure from the board, the expectations he had to bear, and the emptiness in his soul. Maya listened. She realized that behind the cold, distant facade of a billionaire was a man also seeking peace and love. She began to share her story, about the accident that took her ability to walk when she was young, about the years of struggling to accept her fate, and about how she found purpose in helping others. They spent hours talking, sharing their deepest thoughts. Maya saw Richard's sincerity, and Richard saw Maya's beautiful soul, her resilience, and her compassion. Gradually, Maya's reserve melted away, and a gentle affection began to blossom between them. They strolled in Central Park, read books together, and even cooked simple meals together in Maya's apartment, something Richard had never done before in his life. Richard and Maya's relationship couldn't be kept secret forever. News of billionaire Richard Sterling proposing to an unknown woman in a wheelchair quickly leaked to the outside world, causing a sensation in the media. Tabloids ran headlines like, "Billionaire Sterling marries gold digger in wheelchair. Is this a new gimmick by Richard Sterling to save his company?" Maya was portrayed as a schemer, someone trying to extract Richard's fortune. She read those articles, her heart aching. Richard tried to reassure her, but his own indignation flared. Things became even more complicated when Chloe, Richard's ex-wife, sought out Maya. Chloe was a sharp, proud woman who had once shared a life with Richard, but ultimately couldn't endure the pressures of high society. "Do you know what kind of person Richard is?" Chloe said to Maya, her voice full of sarcasm. "He'll drain you, then discard you like an old toy. Do you think he really loves you? He just needs an heir, someone who can maintain his position on the board. You're just a pawn in his game." Chloe's words were like a splash of cold water on Maya. She began to doubt. Was it all just a plan by Richard? Was she merely a temporary solution to his problems? The turmoil in Maya's mind, coupled with the media pressure, plunged her into anxiety. Meanwhile, Richard faced the risk of being ousted from his position as chairman of the board. Members cited that this strange relationship was harming the company's reputation and stock. An emergency board meeting was called. Richard knew he faced a major challenge, but what he worried about more than anything was Maya, the woman he was slowly falling in love with. At the board meeting, the atmosphere was tense. Richard sat there, facing scrutinizing gazes and harsh criticisms. He knew he could lose everything. Just when things seemed to be at an impasse, the boardroom door opened. Maya, in her wheelchair, appeared. She had overheard the whispers and decided she had to do something. Her face was pale, but her eyes shone with determination. "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen," Maya began, her voice echoing through the room, though slightly trembling. "I am Maya. I don't care about Mr. Richard Sterling's money or fame." She looked directly at each board member, then turned to Richard, her eyes full of love and trust. "I love him not for his wealth. I love him because he believed in me when no one else did. He made me feel good enough, worthy enough, not as a pitiable disabled person, but as a woman who is loved." Maya's sincere words were like a fresh breeze blowing through the stuffy room. She continued, telling her life story, about the difficulties she had overcome and how Richard had brought light into her life. She asked for nothing, only wanting to protect the man who had given her faith. The board members' expressions began to change. They saw not a gold digger, but a brave and genuine woman. Although Richard ultimately had to step back from day-to-day operations and appointed his daughter as co-director, he retained his position and, more importantly, he kept his love. 3 months later, Richard and Maya were married in a simple, intimate ceremony in Central Park. There was no extravagance, no famous guests, just their closest family and friends. Maya wore a simple yet elegant wedding dress, radiating the brightest smile. They moved to a smaller house in Brooklyn, easily accessible for a wheelchair. Maya continued her work at the Disability Support Center, while Richard devoted more time to personal and social projects. Together, they established the Maya Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing vocational training and transitional housing for people with disabilities. The foundation helped hundreds find jobs, integrate into the community, and regain faith in life. Richard and Maya's story spread, changing how people perceive the once cold billionaire. He was no longer just a successful businessman, but a man with a heart, someone who had found meaning in his life through love and dedication. His legacy was now not just skyscrapers, but changed lives and dreams given wings. Their love proved that miracles can come from the most unexpected places, and that compassion can change the world.